Hi, thanks for tuning in to my weekly art lesson. This week we'll be studying a simple subject and doing a simple line drawing and really focusing on creating a drawing that has a lot of interesting and expressive line work. It's not just about recreating reality perfectly, it's about drawing in an interesting and expressive way to make your image more dynamic. All right, so let's get started. So the subject I've chosen here is just a couple of celery leaves in a glass with a black background. And we'll be starting off with a mechanical pencil. So starting off with very large shapes, broad shapes, looking at the whole subject as one, and trying to sort of get the broader proportion in place before we start refining into smaller shapes. So keeping it nice and broad. So I'm using a lot of very soft lines, very loose lines, very gestural lines. And now I'm going in with an kneadable eraser. You can get it from any art shop. And I'm just sort of taking out some of the lines that were in the wrong spot, were out of proportion. I'm just trying to work on that proportion. So looking at the shapes in relation to one another, so not independently. Everything is sort of connected to another. And that's why, by keeping it moving, by keeping it broad, you see things in the correct proportion because you're looking at the larger, broader picture. So I'm going in now with a graphite stick and just kind of making some very gestural lines, very loose once again, but more defined. So initially with the mechanical pencil, I was kind of placing everything in a rough spot, and now I'm going in with a little bit more detail. Okay, now I'm going in with a charcoal pencil, and I'm making it even more defined. And at this point, I've got everything sort of roughly in the right place. So now I can start focusing on the finer detail. But still, we're mostly just focusing on the outline of the subject, and we're not really doing any tonal work. So it's just a rough representation of the subject. So once again, I'm just sort of really kind of now focusing in on the shape of each leaf, while still keeping things in relation to one another, working quite quickly and still trying to keep the lines expressive. So I don't want it to feel too contrived. I want it still to have a life of its own. This approach to drawing, where you start off with, softer lines and then overlay it with thicker lines and thicker and vary those lines so drastically, really does create a lot of interest in the drawing, and does help with the energy. Okay, so this is sort of the finished drawing at this point. You can see as we go into zoom in, you can see that the layers of lines does really create a lot of interest and activity. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the demonstration. Just to recap, when you are doing a sort of line drawing, remember to vary the density of the line, the expression of each line, and try to keep things moving. Don't get too hung up on one small area. You want to sort of keep that movement and that speed up to create a cohesive whole. Towards the end, you can start to focus on maybe a bit more detail, but initially focus on the big picture, and keep it interesting. Keep it interesting.